Awesome. Hey everyone, I'm Tiffany and welcome to Wise Skies. This class is recorded for our membership. We're recording in October of 2022. And Leisha is going to teach us about the heart center, also called the ego, today. And this is the end of our study on the 9 centers. So at this point, we have made it all the way through the different 9 centers. We can start to talk about 9-centered discussion, 9-centered communication. We have some other topics that we've been talking about, what we're going to study next in the body graph. But if you're joining this series kind of late, you can watch all of the other videos on the 9 centers, and I'll pop that in a link for everybody watching live and everybody watching the replay. You can find that in your member center. It's a private link on our YouTube that goes to all of the HD workshops we've had so far. So Leisha, thank you so much for taking some time to teach us. I know it's a busy season and I am really excited that we kind of saved this one for the last.
I know it's like a huge one, actually. So it's so we kept thinking we were at the end of the 9 centers and then we're like, wait, no, there's another one. So, this one is like the gift that keeps on giving is what I find for the heart ego center. So yeah. Is there, you want me to go ahead and jump in, Tiff?
Yeah, jump on in.
Okay.
And I'm going to look for that link for the videos.
Okay. So I do like to always just have a little thing about what is human design? What are we talking about? We have a lot more links and different things, as Tiffany was saying, with what is it? What is the profile? What are the types? You know, all of those different things. But essentially, human design is a system for making decisions as yourself. And it lays out the exact mechanics of how your aura works in the world, how your energy works, whether you're aware of it or not, that's how it's working. And so it allows us to see very precisely the mechanics and have this awareness in order to make decisions as our unique selves. And of course, all of life is really small and big decisions in each moment, right? And what I love is it gives these practical tools for navigating all of life's decisions correctly, whether it's career, relationship, parenting, you know, what you're going to eat, like literally where you're going to live, all of it. So it's a layered process and it is a keyword process. And it starts with awareness of your true self. And we can see that in the mechanics of the body graph. I love that it gives us a clear strategy and authority for operating as ourselves, clearly, uniquely, and cleanly. And above all else, human design is an experiment. It's called the science of differentiation, of how we are each different and how we can continue to differentiate according to who we are in our body graph, and sort of slowly remove all the layers of who we're not, who we thought we needed to be, of, you know, why can't I be this or have that or do that? It's like clears all that out and we can just cleanly be our own individual selves. And it's an experiment. So don't believe any of it. It's not a belief system. It's like you can only validate it for yourself by giving it a try, see what happens, see what data you can collect and what pattern emerges over time. I love that because I don't want to be told to believe anything. I'll figure it out myself. You know, I'll tell you if I believe that. So I love that empowering aspect of it, that, you know, we can each figure it out for ourselves. Tiff, were you going to add something?
No, did I look like I was going to add something?
No. Maybe so. Okay.
Oh yeah.
But we do that all the time. Yeah. We gasp all the time. Okay, so let's go ahead and start looking at the heart, the ego center. I want to show you where it is on the body graph. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and I can pop it back off as we talk. So can y'all see my body graph here? Okay, so the heart ego center is this center right here. Okay, so it can be called, you'll see it sometimes in human design language and resources, that sometimes it's called the heart center, sometimes it's called the ego center. Both are appropriate, very much so, and we'll get into that today. This is a motor, so this is considered a motor. It's willpower, egoism, the material world, self-worth. We'll get into a little bit more of what it is. And so you'll want to look up your body graph. You can go to mybodygraph.com and do a free account and just look up your account and see if your heart center is colored in, like Tiffany's here. Is it colored in? Or is it undefined like mine, which means that it's not colored in. It's going to be an inconsistent way that willpower and worth and value shows up in our lives. Okay. So definitely invite you to look up your particular chart if you don't know if you're defined or undefined, because it is a huge thing to understand the definition of the heart and ego center. A lot of the kind of not self, undefined heart center talk is like, I have to be in control. I better do this because if I don't, I won't be worthy. I have to be brave. I have to pump myself up to feel good about myself so others can see my value. I have to be loyal. I have to prove that I'm loyal, that I'm dependable. I need courage and willpower to do this. If I show them, that they can trust in my commitments, then they will like me, they will love me, they will think I'm valuable. I will get to feel I'm valuable. And I mean, for me, I find even as a mom, it's like if I keep the dishes done and all the things and all the kids, all their things lined up and all coordinated. And if I, keep the house clean, and if I'm this and that kind of partner, and if I'm this and that kind of mom, and if all that's related to proving my value as a mom, just as one example. Okay, so we're going to get into this a bit more. And I do want to note the mechanics of this conditioning. So if you're undefined in the heart center, that means that you are conditioned by all the, we better do this to prove in the world, right? We better show our value. We need to show our worthiness. We need to do things to show our worthiness. Those are the mechanics of the undefined heart center. If we are undefined, that means we're white in the chart, like mine, if you can see here. And that means I'm going to amplify that feeling of work. Like when I'm around Tiffany, who has a defined heart, I might feel like I need to prove even more. I need to commit even more. I need to make even more promises and show my value even more, because I'm amplifying someone that is here to have a consistent way of proving and being and value and worth, knowing what is valuable, knowing what is worth. Hold on, let me adjust this. All right, so the mechanics are that, there will be proving and worth and all of these things. There will be amplification if we are open or undefined in that area. But throughout our life cycle, I just always like to remind myself and others that anywhere that we are white in the chart, that is the potential for wisdom in that area. So the wisdom of the undefined heart and ego is knowing who, what is worthy, knowing who has a sense of self-esteem, knowing what values are worth what bargains are fair and right and good, right? Okay. So as you can see in my undefined heart, you can see the not self themes: feeling unworthy and undervalued. Constantly this kind of filter of, do I think I have something to prove? I need to prove. Okay, now there's a lot of nuances to that, so we'll get into that a bit. And remember, the open centers in our chart are only kind of an issue when it's running your mind. When it's unbeknownst to us in our awareness, before we know our mechanics, it's just constantly back there in the background saying, you need to prove, you need to do this, this, and this to show you're worthy. Well, you made a commitment, so now you need to keep it. And there's a lot of nuances to that. But when we start to see where those open centers are running our mind, we can stop taking action from what that mind is saying from those not self areas. Okay, so instead we can watch it. Doesn't make it not painful. Doesn't mean it's not easy. I mean, it doesn't make it not painful at times. Doesn't mean it's easy all the time, just because we can see it. I find I still feel the feeling of like questioning my worthiness or my value or whatever, but I can see it now and I'm not going to take action from that. So that's a process as well and takes time. And ultimately, strategy and authority is going to be the ultimate foundation, core, key, like bottom line of everything always, is knowing your open centers and seeing your not self questions, right? Which you can see on the side here. I do not know why that is highlighted. There we go. Constantly seeing the not self questions, but also following your strategy and authority. If I'm always waiting for the invitation and depending on my inner authority, which is splenic, to tell me what invitations are correct, that's going to navigate everything. So I just always like to bring that back to, it can be really complex and heady and mind, boggling and all these things. And yet we can just always go back to strategy and authority. Okay. I think I don't know if it's valuable to continue to see the the screen. So I'll just stop sharing for now. Okay, so this is about seeing the mind chatter for what it is and gradually digging down deeper and deeper to what is truly you underneath that, which is why I love, because it's practical. So let's talk a little bit more about the heart ego center. So we mentioned it's willpower, ego. It's like this will to survive. I mean, it's kind of underneath like all of humanity as well, you know, is related or is rooted in this heart willpower ego center. And so the biological association with this is literally it's the heart and some other things. So it's called the heart center. And but it's also it's each of these gates that are coming off of it. Just gonna keep going back and forth. We've only got 4 gates coming off the ego center, right? We've got 40, 26, 51, and 21. Each of those corresponds to a biological system. Okay, so stomach is gate 40, the thymus gland is gate 26, the gallbladder is gate 51, and we'll talk about what each of these gates are, and the heart is gate 21. So again, this is a really powerful motor. This is, you know, it's really the bedrock of society is rooted in will. Like we said, the real will to survive in a community and thrive on the material plane, because that is how we survive. You know, we need material resources. We need food. We need shelter. We need all of those things. And there's this direct connection to the throat. So it's almost like this kind of tribal, and I think what we're going to do, and Tiffany alluded to it, we're not completely adhered to what our next subject is going to be, but we've talked about doing circuitry. And there's 3 types of circuitry in the human design body graph: tribal, collective, and individual. So tribal is about the family, about the smaller community. And this is about providing resources for the smaller communities, because that allows the collective of humanity to survive, right? So just to kind of, it's like a good thing that we have this heart will center, and that we have, I think, 30% of humanity defined and 70% undefined. It's distorted though. And that's what I watch shows and I can just, it's like rampant everywhere. I need to do this to show you that I love you. I need to prove to everybody that they're not gonna, you know, they made fun of me when I was little. I'll prove to them, I'll show them. All that is kind of distortion of the heart ego center, right? Okay. So that's why we do have so many heart and digestive problems, right? Related to the ways of this kind of not self compensation for poor self-esteem in this heart center. There's a tendency in society, and I mean, for sure in me, looking back over my life, it's like the overachievement, right? Like making promises, bargains that I don't have the will to keep, which I don't realize, I'd never realized. So I would push myself harder, but my body is not designed, my vehicle is not designed to have that consistent willpower to apply to things, to keep my commitments. So that becomes kind of a different frame to look at. It's laboring beyond what our heart muscle is able to support in order to prove our worth. And that's defined or undefined. So we'll get into that a bit. Okay, so I want to look at the gates again. Okay, so we mentioned the 26 is the thymus gland, 51 is the gallbladder, 21 is the heart muscle, and 40 is the stomach. So these are different ways that members of the tribe connect to one another in order to successfully live out what is called, in human design, we call it the material way. It's like there's a whole path of how we succeed on the material plane. And when we succeed on the material plane, we thrive. The tribe, the individual thrives, the tribe thrives. It's very hard to say. And the collective thrives. So it's ultimately about the evolution of the human species, right? Which consciousness is where we are now in evolution. I studied evolutionary psychology in college. And that is like, yes, our vehicles have evolved, but consciousness also evolves. So it's not the same as it was, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago. It's all different now. We've evolved. We continue to evolve. So yes, okay. So just to mention that this is a lot of tribal gates, and it's how we relate to each other in the tribe. Now, one thing I want to mention, so gate 26, I'm going to start there because obviously I have it. It's my personality sun, which I would definitely recommend watching the personality sun video from the Lionsgate Summit if you have not. This is 70% of who you are and how you show up, these top 4 gates. It's also your incarnation cross, which is like your ultimate life purpose, the energy that moves through you in this life that you will be in this life. So gate 26 is called the taming of the power, the taming power of the great, the gate of the egoist. Now, there's a lot more to it than just these names, but it's about being the best salesperson, the best marketer. Tiffany has this whole channel just for reference. So you'll see she has the 44 from the spleen and the 26 twice from the ego. So she has the whole channel. So that means the center on either side is defined. So she has a defined ego and a defined spleen. Mine, I don't have this other side. So I only have a defined spleen and an undefined ego, which means sometimes the light's on, sometimes it's not. Okay, so that's what we talk about in that personality sun one. But the gate 26 is like a manipulation of the memory. It's manipulating the message for the good of the tribe. Now, what I find is that, I mean, it's a trickster gate. So if it's in your chart, look where it shows up and what planet and what position, and you can kind of see how does that show up for me. I mean, it is my literal personality sun. So my mind, this is the mind side, is a trickster. And so I can be aware of that and start to see how that shows up, right? But I just wanted to mention 26 physically is about circulation. It's about fluid and circulation and gravity in the body. So if you have gate 26 defined, get your feet up as much as possible. Tiffany and I are always like, all of our gate 26 friends were like, you feet up, you working with your feet up? What are you doing? Get them up, you know? So right now mine are down, but after this, I will go and put them up because it's about how the circulation works, allows that correct, kind of trickster manipulation of the memory, pulling out the things that are necessary for the message for the tribe. It allows that to function correctly. So that's been like life-changing for me to realize that. Gate 51 is the gate of shock. It's called the arousing or the gate of shock. It's about being competitive. It's about being first at something. Now, if you have this whole channel, you have the gate of initiation. Whether you're a manifestor who's supposed to initiate or not, you've got the channel of initiations. And so again, it will go back to strategy and authority. But gate 51, if you have that activated, it would be important to look at, is it on your red side, your life side, or is it on your black side, which is your mind? And you will probably have a lot of different shocks happening in your life. You're built for it, but you're also bringing shock to others. However, you're built for it. You may notice people being competitive around you and things like that. That's because they're amplifying this gate 51 if they don't have it and you have it. Okay, gate 21 is real. It's called biting through, the gate of the hunter or huntress. It's like being in control. Like if someone has a 21 in a relationship, they're going to want to be in control of the relationship. Now, there's a lot of other nuances in the chart and all these different things, right? But that is something to look at. Now, I have the 45, but I don't have the 21. So I'm going to want to be kind of this is like the gatherer. It's like the queen or king kind of energy, but I'm not going to be in control in the relationship. I don't probably feel the same need to as someone with a gate 21 or this whole channel. Okay. And then gate 40 is that, remember, that's the stomach. That's the gate of deliverance, the gate of aloneness. So it's about the will to provide material resources. Most of these are, but the gate 40, if you have that defined, you will find you need alone time. It's like going out and being friendly with the tribe. That's gate 37, being friendly and making money and providing resources, but then you have to retreat and kind of have your alone time to be able to go back out again and work for resources. Okay, before we move into kind of the defined, undefined, does anyone have anything to share about your gates, like what you have defined or don't from what I've said?
I have, I was just noticing 51 to 25 black, and you were saying a lot of shocks in life. I kind of feel like that resonates a little bit.
Yeah, some different shocking, a lot of shocking things can happen. But what I like to remind myself is some of these gates are like, they're kind of daunting to hear that name, but you're built for it. You can handle shock. I am not built for shock. So thank God there's people like you that can help the rest of us deal with shocking things, or you'll find people might come into your life that, all of a sudden they deal with a shock but it's like you're there to help them move through that. So it kind of changes the frame of it. And are you a projector, Elizabeth?
Generator.
Generator. Okay. So of course, having this whole channel, the channel of initiation, is with being a generator is nuanced. Like it can be a seeming dilemma. And so you got to go back to following your strategy and authority in response, or I don't know if you're also emotional, but in response over time, whatever that is. And then you'll initiate the correct things through response. So that's kind of how it weaves together.
Elizabeth's husband is the reflector.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Anyone else want to share?
You got some chats. You got some chat.
Oh, good. Yes.
Camden's got.
Oh,
three
you have 3
defined.
defined, Camden. Wow. Okay. Debbie, you have nothing defined. So do you have a completely open heart ego center, Debbie? No gates?
Try.
I assume it's completely white, yes? Well, if you have no gates, it sounds like that to me. And, oh, yes, okay. Yeah, both of my kids have completely open heart ego centers, which I'm like, oh, like, I mean, I've got one gate, but I'm also like, oh, they're going to have like, I've got to teach them they don't have to promise or show or commit to, make commitments that they're, unless it's through response, they're both generators, they don't have to prove themselves. And that's tough because that's all the messaging out there, right? Like in school, with friends, in society, in shows they watch, and then their dad is defined ego. So he is here to prove and make commitments and show what's right and wrong and know the values. So there's this amplification there. So yes, if you have no gates, then we'll talk about that, the journey of that completely open ego heart center.
Would you talk a little bit, or just tell me if it doesn't apply? Like I'm seeing in Callie's chart, would you call it a hanging gate? Like she's got the.
Can I pull it up? Pull it up? No. Okay. You're like,
okay. She's got the 37, but in both, but not the 40, just like you.
Yes.
But she's got it in red and black.
She's got this channel.
She does, and she has the 21. But my question is really about when you have like, and this is a good example because you have what I'm talking about. The 37 is not attached to the 40. So we've talked about the things that branch out, 21, 51, 26, 40, but what if they're kind of open for
connection on the other side?
Yeah.
Well, and she's also undefined solar plexus. So this is going to be inconsistently expressed. It's going to depend on the transits, who I'm around, all of that. And as far as the 40, yeah, I mean, she has a defined ego. So it's going to be, she probably will want that alone time sometime. It's almost like you seek the thing that you're missing there.
That's what
But she also has other things in her chart, like being a hermit. She's a 2-4, she's got the hermit as her personality. So there's other things, that there's like a genetic continuity that yes, she might need some alone time sometimes, which fits with, I think, your experience of her.
Yeah. I'm like looking at everybody's chart. I'm not like rudely.
While we're, yes, I do that constantly.
Okay.
Filtering through all the different mechanics. Okay, 2 of my gates are hanging. Yeah. So, Shelly, you have the 40. It's funny, you nodded when I think I've noticed that before in you. Maybe we've even talked about it. Because I don't know, you don't have a defined solar plexus. Do you have a defined ego? You don't have a defined ego.
No. Nope.
Okay, that's right.
Nope.
I remember we talked about that too.
Proven myself or tried to, multiple degrees.
Oh yeah, overachieving.
Well, this whole thing has just been helpful for me to just let it go. That's my whole thing. It's like,
surrender.
I don't have to prove anything. That's all I need.
Oh my gosh. And that reminds me, Shelly.
Can I give myself a break? Yes. So I do that all the time. I'm like, you don't have anything to prove.
Exactly.
So,
it's huge. And in my, I remember the way that, so I understood, I don't have anything to prove, just literally by being. Anybody with an undefined heart ego center is worthy. Like our worth is not associated with what we do. Just by being, we are inherently worthy. So that's a huge, like, woo. And I remember one teacher, like a very experienced human design teacher for decades that's been doing this. She told me, with an undefined ego, not only do you not need to prove anything, let them prove to you. So that really changed everything for me. I was like, what? Whoa, that's like a whole, who would I be? How would I act? How would I interact with others? How would I see things if I was like, they can prove to me? Yeah, Shelley, were you going to add something?
Thank you for that. Oh, thank you.
That was mind blowing when I heard that. I was like, I had not heard that in the human design in that way before, you know?
So I have a quick question. So
Yes.
if you do have a defined ego, but you still feel that need to overachieve and to push past your physical limits, because I think I'm a manifester, so I still have that kind of limited energy. And then 51 is a hanging gate for me. And so it's 26. So I still feel the need to push and to overachieve all the time. So I don't know if that's a nature or nurture.
Yes, we're going to talk about that when we go into define. So that's a perfect segue. It ultimately, you're going to need it. Well, yours is are you an emotional? What channel do you have that goes to your throat? Do you have the 2145?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Is that your only channel to the throat?
There's a hanging gate from 13.
Okay.
But yes, otherwise, yes.
Okay, so that's what makes you a manifestor. So you're an ego manifestor. Yeah, so definitely being a non-sacral, there's going to be limited, willpower to limited energy, limited sacral energy to work on things, right? But that's what with a defined ego, it can also get carried away with committing to too many things because they are competitive and they do want to prove and they do want to show, right? And they're here to do that and they can carry that energy, but it's going to ultimately come to your authority, your strategy and authority, which I know with a manifestor being, it's to inform and initiate, but to inform first, right? So you'll just kind of have to experiment with it and start to inform and see, what do I have the willpower to continue doing, or to apply my energy toward, and how can I rest between, because there's a work rest kind of ratio with the willpower. So I want to go into some of the defined now, and I think it'll add some layers to that. I'm defined, Kendra, I'm defined, and everything is defined and connected except 51. Good thing I'm a generator. I'll prove to someone all day long just how worthy I am. Yeah, you got like all the energy to do that, right? Okay, so the defined ego, and I'm going to pop over to Tiffany's because she is defined ego. So with the defined ego, it's 37% of the world. So it's a small percentage, it's like 3 out of 10 people, 3 or 4 people out of 10 are actually defined and here to prove anything. But the rest of the world is amplifying that and thinking they need to prove and show and all those things. So of course, with a colored in ego, it's fixed, right? You have a consistent relationship with willpower, ego, sense of value and worth. I mean, all the time, I cannot tell you how many conversations with Tiffany, with my partner who's defined ego, I've said, this is what I'm going to charge, or this is what, and they're like, charge way more than that. What are you doing? It's worth so much more. And I'm like, oh, it's almost like undefined ego will work for nothing. Will work for less because there's a not really understanding our value in a way, or what the value should be. And so anybody with a defined ego is going to want to be in control of, when and where they work, what they wear, which demands on your time you will respond to.
Oh my God.
It's almost like there's a demand. That's so you, right, Tiff?
Well, it's so me. It's so funny because as a kid, I couldn't figure out what style I wanted to wear. Was I like a hippie or a cowgirl or a music person or a preppy? Like I was always forever trying something else on, and all I wanted was to like have a uniform so I wouldn't have to think about that shit. But now when you're talking about proving, I was thinking about like how does that come out of my mouth sometimes? And the number one way, like the number one thing I say in psychic development classes is, you don't have to prove anything to me. I like start out every class like
you say that all the time. Yes.
Because people try to prove stuff to me and I'm like, you're you're psychic, I promise. Like, it's not like you're not like,
yeah, you're like, you don't have to do it for me.
yeah, and you don't have to do it for you. And just because my life path and calling involves psychic work and mediumship doesn't mean that you have to follow that path just because you might find a synchronicity or look at 1111. It just means that I'm helping you in a way because I have worked that muscle out for a really long time. And you're as psychic as you have senses, you know, and even when you lose a sense, you're more psychic. So it's not even a deficit, right? It's like these extend into the etheric realms and you can strengthen that. So you don't have to prove anything to me because I already know that you are, right? And I think
such a defined ego thing to say.
it's like right, like, and I think that it when I don't say it, I notice the energy, and when I do say it, it seems to relax in a certain thing. So there's not an added layer. Oh, I'm reading for a teacher. It's like I'm just here to practice. She already believes in me. You know, that's what I'm hoping, anyways. But so that's how it comes out of my mouth.
Well, it's imagine if all the defined egos in our lives, said, you don't have to prove anything to me. I already know you're worthy. This isn't even about that. I've already proven it for myself because I have a defined ego. It's really, I'm just proving it for myself. That's what I'm here to do. I have that energy in me and I did that. I'm doing it. But to hear you say, you don't have to prove anything to me as an undefined ego is huge. So if you have a defined ego, try saying that kind of thing more to your, to your loved ones or your relationships, your interactions, and kind of experiment with it and see. Or even just seeing that mechanic. Yeah.
Sorry. Some of my undefined ego family people I notice that they're also trying to prove something to me. Like they want my approval. And I'm like, I don't care. Like whatever you're trying to do, it's not that I don't care. It's that it's like such a non-issue for me. I'm nonplussed by whatever you're trying to prove. So you might as well prove it to yourself because it's not, my approval has nothing to do with whether you should do it or not, right? Like that may be more G-center, I don't know, but I do notice that in my undefined ego family, this sense of like needing my approval, which to me feels ridiculous, right? I'm like, who cares? Like, I don't need your approval. Why do you need mine? And it's not like about that.
I think you being aware of that is the exception rather than the rule. And one, it's mechanics. So for you to say that, people are automatically going to feel an amplified needing to prove and needing to list all the reasons why this or that. That's where a lot of it comes out for me is like, someone will say something, I'll say, well, here's all the 90 reasons why that's not true or that is true. And it's like, that's proving. So what if I just go, okay, thanks for letting me know how you feel. And I don't need to prove any of that. I don't need to show why they're right, they're wrong. But so that's been how it shows up for me. But I think even, you knowing that is just like huge for those in your life that don't have defined ego, and there's all that language like approval, improvement, all the prove kind of words like disapproval, all those are like part of this too. Like we don't need to be improving ourselves if we're undefined ego. Like, no, that's proving, So there's a lot.
It comes out in the fade thing too, that you guys have heard me talk a lot about in my content, is to not fix, argue, defend, or explain. In some of the other content, it's jade, which I don't know, the J must be judge or something. I don't know what it is, but I go with fade. If I'm trying to fix, argue, defend, or explain, then I'm in the wrong conversation. This morning we had a submission for Spellbound, and I get them quite frequently, where people like want to challenge the pricing and they want to talk about it. And I'm like, it's just what the price is. It's totally okay if it's not a good fit, but I'm not going to spend an hour listening to why you think that I've priced my thing incorrectly when I've got 6 employees that are being paid a very fair and industry standard rate, not inflated, not deflated. But that's another way it shows up too, where I'm like, I'm not even going to get on the phone because it's just it's cool if we're not the right fit for you, but I can't do this, you know, and
See, but even
then
that,
you know what happened, y'all? Rolling Stone contacted us this morning to interview one of our fucking authors. And it's like, the more I just stick with what I got, the thing happens. And let me have a little moment. If like my Hollywood moment is that I wrote that book. I ghost wrote it. So I'm not getting credit for it, but my work will be featured on the Rolling Stone. So it's like, it's kind of cool to not need the credit. I don't have to be, you know, but anyways, I think that, I hope that that is useful. And as we're learning this together.
that's so amazing. First of all, like, oh my God. Second, Jade is justify, Elizabeth said. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Third, everything you're saying though, see, I would find undefined ego, I'd probably be like, oh, well, let me explain why it costs that much. And I mean, in not self, right? Like if I wasn't aware, oh, let me explain. Oh, well, how about $10 off? Like, well, you know, like basically taking, like making the value exchange different and feeling like I need to say why it is. And so it's inspiring for an undefined ego person to hear you say, no, that's just the price, you know, like that's what it is, sticking with it. That's like a huge lesson or wisdom to gain in the undefined ego from a defined ego, you know? So I love that example.
Thanks.
So with a defined ego, yeah, it's, oh, Shelley, did you want to throw something in?
Oh, I just want to say, I mean, I know Tiffany and I had a little brief discussion about like doing things free or the word free, and even being undefined. I think I've done so much free stuff. Like I gave free eye exams, all sorts of stuff. I don't know what it is, but I just got tired of it. and notice it like, oh my God, why am I giving away all these services? But I was almost compelled to do it. Like I didn't have the willpower to say no.
The consistent willpower. Yes, exactly. Yes.
But it bothers me. The word free eye exams, from certain, chain places.
Yes. I love that awareness. And we've talked about that a bunch. And I am so glad you've, that there's that awareness now. It's like, it's not free. You're getting like it's a huge value, anytime value or proving or
but it's hard to place a value on. I don't know. I always had a hard time with that.
Yes, I agree. Okay, so with a healthy defined ego, it's healthy for them to exercise their willpower, to make and keep promises regularly, because you have consistent willpower. So through response, through informing, through invitation, if you make a commitment, like it's healthy for you to keep that commitment, right? Undefined ego, we shouldn't really be making promises to anyone. So that's nuanced, right? Well, I made a promise to be here at 12 today to do this call. So, but it was through invitation and it felt correct, right? So there's nuances to the undefined ego. But for me, I try to be aware of what promises and commitments am I making, because I may or may not have the willpower. So I leave it open. I'm like, I'd love to come. Thank you for the invitation. I'll let you know that morning. Like you kind of, even with sacral, you can do that if you have a sacral response in the moment, you can leave this room for whatever is going to be correct in the moment. So just, playing with it is kind of the key there. And a defined ego has no problem making and keeping resolutions or promises or any of that in the health, like when being healthy, right? It's important for them to do what they say they're going to do, because this is how a defined ego develops trust. And so you should only make promises you can and will keep. And that naturally strengthens the defined ego's like natural sense of self-esteem. It's like you probably enjoy successfully delivering goods, being willful and competitive. It's like natural for a defined ego. There is this balance of work and rest with the defined ego, and statements that start with I, me, mine, that strengthens the heart for the defined ego. Whereas suppressing this natural ego in this natural, like, I know what I'm worth, like I'm good with that, that's mine, that kind of thing. Suppressing that because they might feel like seem egocentric or whatever is detrimental to a defined ego's health. So as long as they're following strategy and authority, they're basically proving themselves all the time. That's kind of part of that natural energy that moves through you. Okay. And then they also defined ego likes to be appreciated and rewarded for their contribution, for providing for family, for providing for community when it's right for you to do that. So for me, knowing that, I'm like, oh, the defined ego beings in my life, like I want to make sure I appreciate them and reward them and show little signs of seeing them, right? Camden, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I've got a question about like, what if you are in a group or from a family that like a lot of you have a defined ego? Because what you were just describing is something I didn't really feel until I kind of extracted myself from my family and literally moved across the Atlantic, and like was like relying on my own resources, and felt grounded. And I wondered if being around other defined ego centers, if that might override a younger, more inexperienced defined person.
I definitely think so. Now I am undefined, but I know Tiffany, you have like some close relationships with other defined egos. And it is like, there's almost like, I don't know, do you want to share anything that like comes up with that, Tiff, in your defined ego kind of
My
relationships?
defined ego battle.
Yes, that's what I was thinking, but I didn't say that.
I think the challenge is I know what I'm doing for myself, and I can't not do that. I can't people please. If I people please for that,
detrimental. Yeah,
it's detrimental. And so it's unfortunate because of course I want everybody to get on my wavelength and do this thing that I think is cool, but it's not for everyone. So it's not correct for everyone, And so I don't know, it's difficult because if two people are battling and they need to go the different way, I think the relaxation occurs when you stop the expectation that anybody should do anything besides what's correct for them. And I mean, that's what HD has done for me in my relationships, is just there's no fault, there's no guilt. Everybody's designed, and all I want to do is support you in your design. And that may mean that we go different ways, and that is the worst part, because you feel like you're breaking up with your friends and your family and the people that you're loyal to, especially with that loyalty thing. Like we've been this way for 42 years, and now I've got my Uranus opposition going on, so you better believe I'm gonna be breaking some bonds with my 3-5 thing going on. But it's exciting, but it's also very heartbreaking. I mean, I have cried hours about the fact that things are just not, people got to go in different directions, and so the less attached I am to somebody else's direction, the freer I am. But I can't dial my Tiffany notch back, because then I'm just going to feel deflated, So
yeah, and I think with just from observation, when there's two ego beings, it is like, I mean, they're kind of maybe going to butt heads sometimes, right? Ultimately, it's going to come to strategy and authority and accepting the other and being respectful and understanding and all of that, like Tiffany's saying. But particularly with two defined egos, I can see a lot of both are there to prove, both are there to exert their willpower. So of course that can, bump up against each other in various ways, depending on the relationship and the age and all that stuff.
And some of those for me, are 9-0 relationships, meaning that we define all of the centers, and it's, the saying is 9-0, nowhere to go, right? Is that right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so there is a certain lockdown that happens in there. It's like you can't break up and you can't move, and you're just like in it.
Can't live with, can't live without, that whole thing.
Yeah. Go away, come back, go away, come back.
Right.
Follow me. It's still, then there's like the masculine, feminine, and then there's like the best friend situation.
The projector with the generator.
Yeah, there's a lot to look at. But Cohen put a quote up the other day, a raw quote about, we're really here to love and to connect. And so the deepest way to love somebody is to love them for who they are, not who they're not, not who you want them to be, right? So
not who you are, right?
Not who you are.
Like Tiff, I mean, you have as we can see, well, I'm not sharing, but on Tiff's, we can see she has defined G. She knows her own love and direction. In fact, her whole incarnation cross, all 4 gates are in this G center. She is about her own direction, period. She's about her own willpower, right? However, I have undefined both, and I have like all these 3 right here undefined. So it doesn't mean I need to go with her. It doesn't mean I need to, have as much willpower as she does and commit to the same things or have the same level of, commitment to things. It's more that I just can let her be her. And I do find with the defined ego that it can also, there's a mechanic that can, with an undefined ego, that it can feel like they can come across as very forceful, right? Because it's a willpower. They have this strong will to do something. And so often there can be I expect others to have the same willfulness, the same willpower, the same commitment and integrity. I mean, that's come up so many times in my relationship where he's the defined ego and I'm undefined. And so when you have a defined ego, you can kind of watch for resistance. Is someone resisting, like maybe they're feeling like they're pushed beyond their capacity, or is there some resistance I'm feeling here? And that can be kind of okay, let me take a step back and regain my own sense of inner power, because I'm somehow putting this forcefulness out, but it's really about my own journey with my own willpower to do things and ego. Okay, I do want to, it's 10 till, I want to talk about undefined. I feel like we've covered a lot, but just to make sure we get all the nuances, get another layer of nuances. So 63% of the population is undefined, right? So we're not designed to be willful and competitive. However, again, that's what the world's messages are, right? It's like we might feel driven very often by a need to find courage and willpower to do things, right? Why can't I have what they have? Why can't I be as fast or as good as they are? I should be able to compete with them. I'm going to overachieve, which of course then is detrimental to our health because we override the willpower. Here's how it kind of goes. Okay, so there's a linear path that I wrote down that is so good. So we overachieve to compensate for our seeming lack of will. And then, shoot, where's my linear path? Okay, I'll get there. Put a pause in that. So yeah, there's a lot of conditioning of we should, could, would, can be. If we just do this, we can be better, prettier, richer, faster, more successful if we would just do this or that. It's like the pressure to improve and continually show ourselves, right? Like, no, take a step back. Let them prove to you. We don't have to prove anything. I am worthy by just being in this room. Undefined ego. Like that's like a mantra that I keep saying to myself because it shows up in all these different ways I'm seeing. And it's a really big conditioning element. Like if you have an undefined ego, it's probably conditioning more than any other center. That and solar plexus are like top 2, conditioning elements. Okay. I really wish I could find my way
that and which was the top 2?
Solar plexus, yeah, heart, ego, and solar plexus. If you're undefined in those areas, like solar plexus and ego, then you're proving and showing, and then you're not, you're avoiding truth and confrontation so that you can prove you're a good whatever, right? Or you're creating harmony and sugarcoating it so that you can prove and show that you're a good blah, right? They really underpin everything, those 2 centers. Okay.
I think I'm getting tripped up a little bit because I have a defined heart center. So this might be why it's not resonating quite, is that if you have undefined, you're worthy just for showing up. And I guess my defined heart center is like, what? Like I'm worthy just for showing up too. Like I'm hearing it in a weird tone.
Yeah.
It's resonating.
It's
weird.
different. Yeah, because you are worthy just by showing up, as all humans are. However, it does have to do with sort of more proving things. And maybe just like let it wash in and kind of just see what you can see in life after this.
Okay.
Because and then the way that defined ego Some of the unhealthy traits, I think, would be more like also what to look at. I wish I could put this graphic in the chat, but I'm unable to for some reason right now.
Which one?
It's the one under defined ego that I have like healthy traits and unhealthy traits. So with the
Okay.
defined ego, being
I'll put
able
it
to
in.
make commitments, having an inherent sense of self-worth, a sense of self-esteem. So that's why you know that you're worthy by showing up. Undefined ego, we need to hear that. We need to hear that more.
Okay.
There's
Okay.
that. Handling the competitive field by exerting your willpower or not, thriving on the material plane through making deals, bargains, promises that ensure you're valued. Thanks, Tiff. Knowing you're here to work with the true aim of making enough money so you don't have to work. That's defined ego, healthy traits.
Okay.
Unhealthy, shying away from making promises and striking bargains. Undefined ego should not be making promises at all, or trades or commitments, you know, because we may or may not have the willpower to carry through with that, but then we made the commitment, so now we're going to push ourselves, and that's detrimental to the heart center and all of those things, right? I mean, not, yeah, it is the heart center, but to the heart organ. Becoming ill if you allow your willpower to be controlled or suppressed by someone else. Losing the trust of the community if you overvalue your own importance. So there can be a over, like I am, you know, like an amplification of your own importance can also happen with a defined ego. And shying away from work and therefore losing your true power and sense of self-esteem. So that's all for the defined ego. I want to mention the completely open heart ego center because I know we have someone here with that. It, again, anywhere there's a completely open heart center or center, it's like you don't really know how to relate to that theme. So meaning, so for the completely open heart, don't have a good solid grasp of what worthiness is or how to measure it or what one needs to do to achieve it. They can kind of waver between an exaggerated sense of importance to having no worth at all. Okay, but this is like part of the path with the completely open is there's the ultimate wisdom that can come out of that. And also vulnerable to being manipulated by people who promise to kind of or make them feel worthy, that are conveying worthiness by association. They can also believe propaganda really easily, that kind of thing, with a completely open heart center. The wisdom, though, over time that you can that is the potential there is the trustworthiness of your word, using of money and personal power on the material plane, knowing what is worthy, knowing who has the self-esteem, knowing what bargains are worth making, knowing what promises are worth committing to, etc. Okay, and then did you put the other one in? You did, Tiff. Okay, so with the healthy traits for the undefined ego, it's knowing not to make promises, having a healthy sense of self-worth and worthiness, having no need to prove oneself, which shows up in all kinds of different ways, having wisdom about who can make commitments and promises and fulfill material demands, having no need to make promises and nothing to prove to anyone ever, enjoying taking advantage of the conditioning of the defined ego. Ooh, I love feeling that worth and that competition with Tiffany, you know, that I get to feel when Tiffany's around, but I can let it go when I leave her presence. You know, it's not, I don't need to take it into my life and, you know, I need to prove and show and all those things. Oh, and a healthy trait, loving to spend money. Interesting, undefined egos. Unhealthy, making promises you can't keep, feeling unworthy and undervalued, being insecure with the material world, having a hard time charging money or putting value on yourself, trying to overachieve by forcing, like sheer force of will, driven by your lack of self-worth. I can really relate to that. The best of everything. That's what my overachieving. It's like every single thing you could name in high school. Like I was the top of all that. And it's like, wow, was I proving, you know, believing you're competitive and therefore damaging your heart and stomach, shying away from competition for fear of losing. So that's undefined. Now, again, just awareness is key. Like there's not an answer. It's just more the mantra of, you know, what is the worth here? Where is my worth showing up here? How is my worth affecting others? Now, this is for undefined or defined, right? How is my willpower and my competitiveness affecting others? Or is it mine or not? You know, am I amplifying? And the awareness itself begins the shifting of it. Now, there's other tools you can layer on top to help clear out some of that, you know, some of that not self gunk. But that's what starts the deconditioning, is awareness. So I think that's kind of all we have. We have 3 minutes. Oh, Shelley, you're having your having internet cable buried in the yard. May lose connection. Okay, no problem. So yes, so we are all inherently worthy, but we have a different relationship with that sense of worth. And that's kind of the point here. And I think next time, yeah.
Do you want to talk about, I mean, I know that it's like a wrapping up stage, but do you want to talk about the connection to the gallbladder in my issues, or as a health thing, or do you not want to do that right now?
Well, we can try. I haven't really come up with like a diagnostic,
Yeah.
type of thing. I noticed that Tiffany, she's had these gallbladder things. You can see in her chart here that she does not have gate 51, which is associated with the gallbladder. However, both of her parents had gate 51. And I think one had it like 2 or 3 times. And it's in it. So I was like, ooh, let me send this. And then I wanted to explore that further. Like, you probably amplified that, or they brought a lot of shock into your life that you aren't equipped to deal with. So perhaps there's some layers there having to do with that gate, with the gallbladder.
The not equipped to deal with shock is like huge,
Yeah.
I have a
Very
friend
huge.
that's in the medical world, and she thinks that because I'm a medium that I want to hear about all the gore, and I'm like, oh, like I physically feel what you're
Shocking, too
talking
shocking.
about. It hurts
Yeah.
my skin and I can't breathe, and like I can't. She's like, what, don't you do like murders and death? And I'm like, that's different. And she's like, no, it's not. I'm like, it somehow is. It's like I can't.
Somehow it's-
It
yeah.
somehow is.
Doesn't that make sense? Do you feel like your parents could handle more of that in a different way? Just curious.
Shock?
Yeah, because they both had that gate or several times.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they dealt with shock much differently than I do. And, as a sober person who doesn't check out with drugs and alcohol and food, my ability to handle shock is much less too,
Yeah.
there's no way for me to escape it. So, yeah, I think that that's a differentiating factor in my little choice free will life over here.
Yeah.
But, well, this is fascinating. I just wanted to bring that up in case somebody else noticed if they have an issue when you were talking about what they were related to, the different organs and things. I just wanted to kind of plant a seed in case that helped anybody. And I just I'm always so mind blown. So thank you for sharing your wisdom. And Alicia is very committed to the path of HD, or the process of HD, and she leads the HD group here in Austin. And so if you guys are ever traveling to Austin, you might check out when the HD Austin group meetup happens. It's a lot of fun, and you might have an HD meetup group where you live, and you might live somewhere that's really cool, that has a really cool HD support group. It's really fun to be in Aura or with other people that are on their experiment, because we can continue to learn from each other. So thank you for sharing your time and talent and wisdom, and everybody that came live. I enjoy learning about you, and the reason that we use Leisha and my chart mostly is because you guys know us, but we can also incorporate your charts. And
Totally.
I think next time we're trying to talk about circuitry, and so we're going to simmer on that. But if you guys have questions, just email me back. I'll send out the replay shortly, and have a great weekend.
Thank you all.
Thanks, guys.
Mwah. Bye.
Bye.